Hello, Miss Dennett. I'm so glad that you were able to meet with me today. I want to talk about one of the lessons that you sent me that you just recently completed with your class. So do you have your lesson with you?
I did. I brought my lesson plan.
Okay. Which standard did you use in this lesson?
Yeah, it's an English Language Arts Critical Literacy for 8th grade standard. It's analyze how authors use literary elements, and we did setting, characters, and dialogue to contribute to the meaning and purpose of a text using text evidence as support.
Okay. So what were some of the activities that you used during your lesson?
Yeah, I made a presentation, and at the very beginning we did a bell ringer. It's just kind of a review about what is a genre.
Okay.
And I instructed the kids because they were separated into groups, there was about 6 or 7 groups, to kind of talk to each other about what a genre is, and then we discussed it as a class. I went over that as a whole thing, and then we also had some notes that I had up on the board, closed notes. I gave the kids copies of those, and they filled those out as we kind of went through them, talking about different elements of a genre and what makes something a genre. And then they did, I had like a sheet of paper, like construction paper, and I had 2 excerpts on each thing from different stories, different genres. Like one was like dystopian and one was fantasy. And they would go through, I instructed them to highlight and annotate, looking for setting, characters, and dialogue to support like what they think would support what genre it should go in. So I wanted them to classify it into a genre based off of those things. And then we went over that as a group. I had each excerpt on the PowerPoint presentation on the board, on the smart board, and each kid came up, one from each group, and they highlighted each thing and explained why they highlighted it. We discussed it as a whole class group. And then after everybody had done that, we kind of touched a little bit on how literature is not the only thing that can be classified into a genre. Touched a little bit about that. And then we did the last 5 minutes of exit slip, where they answered a question.
So how did you determine whether they mastered that skill or not?
Yeah, the exits, well, obviously, by asking questions while we were doing the group stuff, walking around and asking questions. But at the end, we did an exit slip, and the exit slip question was to explain how one of the literary elements contributed to a specific genre. And I wanted them to answer that question.
So how did you want that question answered? Like what criteria were you looking for?
Yeah, I wanted them to be able to like take setting, characters, or dialogue and explain, like use that to explain how it went into a genre.
Okay.
Or it made something into a genre.
So would you say that the class mastered that skill, about like what percent, or would you say that all of them mastered it?
I would say about 90% of them mastered it.
Okay, so for the ones that didn't master it, how did you help them? Like when they came back to class the next day, what did you do to kind of help them with that?
Yeah, well, this is kind of a review list. We were moving into doing a dystopian novel.
Okay.
It's kind of this was building up to that. And so the next day when we came in, we started talking specifically about dystopian novels and the elements of a dystopian novel. So, I mean, that and I kind of went back to this lesson from the day before just to remind them of the elements of genre in general.
Okay.
So we kind of went back and kind of covered a little bit of that the next day.
Did you have any diversity in your classroom? Maybe students with IEPs or...
Yes, there was. This class was very heavy in ELL students. So I had one with an IEP. I had quite a few Spanish-speaking students but only 2 of them who really didn't speak English at all. The other ones, they spoke English fairly well. And then I had one from Vietnamese and one who spoke Japanese.
Oh, goodness.
So there was
very diverse.
It was a very diverse classroom.
So what did you do to help them? Like, how did you, especially during the exit slip, how did, like, maybe your students who were accommodated, what did you look for to know that they had mastered that skill?
Right. So most everybody in the class could speak and write in English.
Okay.
Now, there's different levels of that. Some may do a 3rd grade sentence. Some may be more on, 8th grade level.
Mm-hmm.
So they just kind of wrote how they could. My IEP student was, with that one, I specifically sat down and talked to him because he likes to get hyper-focused on one thing. So I asked questions to kind of prompt his thinking, and I allowed him to just write down. He didn't make a complete sentence. He just kind of wrote down bullet points.
Okay.
Top thing with him. Then there was 2 ELL students who I allowed them to write what they wanted to say in their native language, and then translate it and just copy that using Google Translate on their phone.
And that goes up to my another question about technology. How often do you use technology in the classroom?
Every day.
Every day.
Yes.
How do you use it? What are some of the things that you use?
Because I have diverse students,
Mm-hmm.
I always want to have a translation device. Now, they use their phones a lot of times because that's what they're used to, and that's just what they want.
Okay.
But I do have a computer specifically for that if they need to translate. I use a smartboard every day. All of my lessons, I have a PowerPoint that goes with them in some form or fashion, so that I make and I put up there, and so I use that every single day.
Good. When you are, I think you may have already answered this, but when you are teaching your lesson, throughout the lesson, what are some strategies that you use throughout the lesson to make sure that your students are connecting with that skill throughout the lesson?
For this lesson, I walked around because they were in groups, and so they were having their little individual group discussions. You walk around and you listen, you hear what they say, and then stop and ask questions like, why did you choose this? And get them to explain it, or if they're struggling, ask questions to kind of just to kind of prompt their own thinking, because that happened a couple of times because they were just kind of they were looking all around one word, and I'm like, okay, so I kind of